All right. So, yeah. Well, tell me about it. So what happened? You presumably you got a call from somebody in West Bloomfield.
I got a call from the owner, and they were trying to sell the house. And the home inspection revealed that they had mold in the attic, poorly ventilated attic. So they called
So
me.
they had a separate home inspection done.
Correct. Yes.
Um,
The home
so
inspector, obviously discovered that they had a huge mold issue up in their attic.
So what type of a house was it?
It was a 1980s designed house that did not have a ridge vent on the top of the roof. And
Oh, wow. So isn't that like going against code?
Not back in the 80s, no.
Huh. So I'm surprised, given that the house was that recently built, they got a mold issue. Is that
Correct.
common?
Usually, if a house has a ridge vent, it's not common unless they have a leak. But because of the poor ventilation, it's very common for an attic like that. They had a leak, and basically it's like a petri dish just gestating up in the attic without any air exchange. So the mold had free reign to attach itself to a majority of the attic.
So was it to do with the vent, or was it actually that the roof was leaking?
No, the roof was leaking. But if you have like a ridge vent and two side vents, it gives you some air exchange, so the mold can't attach itself because the air is flowing back and forth. But when the air becomes stagnant, that's basically just an environment for the mold to grow.
So I can't believe how that's seriously black mold. It looks awful.
Oh, it's very typical of a unvented attic that had
wow.
And
I'm surprised they didn't have to replace all the wood.
No, not at all. It was just basically surface mold that had grown there. It didn't deteriorate the wood whatsoever.
So help me understand. They had a leak, but did they not notice they had a leak? It couldn't have leaked very much. It was just a little bit, maybe, or what was the deal?
It was a leak, and the roofer said that it was fixed, and I believe there was some ice damming involved, and they didn't paid any more heed to that besides taking the word of the roofer.
Right. So they didn't, when they realized they had a leak, presumably it was coming into the house, they didn't look in the attic, or?
No, the leak was there. They fixed the patch, but the mold that had occurred about 5 years previous.
Oh.
So the entryway into that space in the attic was through the bedroom, and nobody took any initiative to check and see how the attic itself was doing.
What kind of house size, or just your guess as to what kind of value of house? Was it like a big expensive house, or was it a small 3-bedroomed, or can you describe it a little bit?
It was a 2-level house, probably about 3,200 square foot, and it had some high gables to it. The pitch was a little steeper, and it was still a very modern designed house. It was well kept. It just wasn't.
So was it your typical $300,000 house, 400, 500? What sort of ballpark are we in, roughly, would you guess?
In West Bloomfield, probably 600,000.
Oh, wow.
Easily.
Is West Bloomfield a posh area then?
It's the second highest grossing area in Detroit, besides Birmingham.
Huh, I didn't know that.
That's
what I was going to ask you next. Whereabout is West Bloomfield? I don't think I've ever been there.
It's a little north of Detroit. It's where all the sports stars live, Birmingham and West Bloomfield.
Oh, is it? Wow.
Yep. All the hockey players live there. Matthew Stafford lived there. It's pretty posh.
So, okay, so we've got the images. So tell me what image you want me to click on, and I'll open it, and you can just talk through kind of what happened and what you did and stuff.
Probably the top right, or top left, excuse me.
So we'll start there and go through?
Sure.
Okay, so that's the one that we're on.
Yep, so that area right there is the infected area before remediation.
Uh-huh.
Now, the difference is that remediation will kill all the mold in the air and on all surfaces. that is the staining of the mold itself. So it's two different projects. The first one is to kill all the mold, which was done. And because the home inspection wanted it visually removed, that's a whole different step.
So was that picture was after the mold had been killed?
Correct. It's,
right.
For lack of a better word, it's like leaving dead bodies stacked up.
But do the dead bodies stink, or is it, at that point not going to smell?
Not dead. Nope, smells
right.
gone.
So it's not going to, because I mean, a dead body is going to smell, right?
Correct. Yes. You're the first person to ever say that to me, but yes.
Okay, go on.
So, generally 85% of your mold is floating in the air, and 15% of it's looking to attach itself to a surface.
Uh-huh.
With the inadequate ventilation going on in that attic space, there obviously was mold floating around, and because of that leak, it attached itself to the surface and just started spreading. And once it spreads, it's pretty much going to run throughout the whole basement, or excuse me, the whole attic.
So isn't black mold the one that's really unhealthy?
Well, most molds have different colors. Black mold is really a euphemism for what they call microtoxic mold. Microtoxic mold is two different molds that are probably the most common are Stachybotrys and Chaetomium. That attic had a very high count of Stachybotrys and Penicillin and Aspergillus. So not only was mold in the attic, it was unhealthy mold in itself.
Was it able to be detected in the house? Was it contained in the attic?
That was contained in the attic. The rest of the house was tested. That was tested by an independent tester. I did not do the testing.
Right.
The rest was mold free with the exception of that attic.
Okay. So what's the process then to get rid of the mold?
So what we do is we use a dry fog called Instapure. It's industrial strength hydrogen peroxide and vinegar. It's EPA approved green. And a mold cell is basically made out of a starch and sugar. What we do is we blast that Instapure within the whole structure and the environment. And what it does is it eats away at that mold cell and it collapses in on itself. So it kills everything that's in the air and everything that's on the surfaces. So what you're looking at is dead mold at this point.
So how long does the process take to do that? I mean, what's involved? So you go up there with a big machine, or what do you do?
So we've got a tank that holds the solution, and we have generators. We have a long tube that's attached to two heads. Those heads will spray up to 0.7 microns in size, which is about 20 times smaller than a mold cell. That gets blasted into the area itself. There's basically a mathematical equation of the square footage versus the ceiling height. So most houses are based on an 8-foot ceiling and the square footage. An attic with that pitch is definitely different than an attic that would be at like a 612 pitch. There's more space to take up with that fog. So it took a little longer because we had higher gables. But something like that generally takes about 2 hours. And we perform
a couple of hours. Okay.
Yep. And we perform an after test to make sure the levels are at healthy levels for human consumption.
So that's where we look at, is that before and after?
Correct.
So it's the same image before and after. Wow,
Yep.
That has really come away. How can you possibly go about removing all that black stain? I mean, you can't like rub it or sand it because of all the nails sticking through. How does that work?
Correct. What you do is you have a tank. Generally, if you can put it on your shoulders, or you can. With that pitch, you can kind of stand up, but basically it's a wand, and you just apply what they call MMR or Avenger solution, and that is exclusively designed to remove any type of mold stains.
So it's like jet washing, is it?
It's
Power
exactly
washing.
washing. Yep.
So what happens? I mean, that's going to push a whole bunch of liquid onto the roof, doesn't it? Make the all the insulation and the floor wet.
It does. I mean, it's not very prevalent. Majority. I mean, you adjust the spray so it pretty much clings to the plywood itself, but you will get some seepage and drippage. Yes.
Oh, so you're not going to end up with a soggy, soaky floor sinking through to the ceiling or anything?
No. Just a very,
okay.
very acute bleach smell.
So is this process intrusive to the house at all?
The clients can be right there. They don't need to vacate the house. If we were remediating a house, they would have to vacate, but because it's an attic, the smell and the chemicals dissipate after 40 minutes.
Right, and is that the equipment for the solution that cleaned it?
Yes.
Cool. So again, that's before.
Yep.
And this is where you've cleaned, and this is where you've got to clean, is it?
Yeah, kind of did a checkerboard so you could see the difference.
Yeah, that's pretty dramatic. Huh.
That one took a lot of product. That was really bad.
Big surface area.
Yeah, huge.
And you definitely want that removed. You'd hesitate to buy a house with all that in it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, where I've got a loft over the garage, and we had insulation put over the roof, the pitch of the roof, and we had those run all the way up, and it's vented at the top. So that's the right way to do it?
Correct. Generally, mold grow on fiberglass because it's not an organic material. It's basically glass. So mold does not attach to insulation.
So was there any mold like under the insulation, or was it only on the wood that was exposed?
It was only on the wood that was exposed.
Cool. So is there anything else we would want to understand about this particular project?
Well, one of the things is that we can be in and out of an attic in 2 hours with an after test. Most companies will charge a lot more, and it will take more time to get the job done. If it's a realtor and they're looking to turn around a house very quickly, we can be in and out of there in 2 hours.
Even with both processes, the killing the mold and
killing the mold, 2 hours in and out.
Right.
If visual remediation or visual removal, that's a whole different ball game. That was 6 hours worth of spraying.
Oh, 6 hours. Okay,
yeah.
So this is what was it, a full day, or did it go over more than one day?
Very labor intensive. Because you basically have to bring up some planks and put the planks on the studs so you don't fall through the ceiling.
Yeah.
So each in between those studs is it's probably 20 or 30 minutes worth of work between the studs, just spraying, pushing it back. It's just very labor intensive.
Right. So how long did the whole process take then in this case?
I sprayed it one day and that took 2 hours. I came back the next and it was probably six and a half hours.
Right. So you worked for your pennies on that one then?
Yeah, that was a tough one.
So do people, if somebody's got this level of problem, do they often sort of get it treated but not cleaned? Is that normal?
That's all up to the health inspector. That's all up to the home inspector. There are some home inspectors that are happy with doing dry fog remediation and after test showing that the levels are at healthy levels, and they're happy with that. There are other home inspectors that want the mold killed and then removed. And then there's the client. Sometimes they don't care about the mold being removed. They just want it killed. And there are other ones that are very adamant about getting that staining off the attic itself.
So in this case, then, it was discovered and required to be removed by the home inspector?
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
And
All
I
right.
think it had to do with the realtor too, because he
I
took
imagine.
photos of it and they have to disclose it to the buyer.
Right. All right. Anything else we should know about this project?
No, I think that covers it.
All right. Cool.